What if I told you that this and these were produced by the same plant? They weren't. It's mid-November. I already ate them all. But for the sake of argument, pretend they were. Wouldn't that be cool? Well, that is exactly what I thought, as I thought that grafting was a really cool new world that I could get into by combining multiple different varieties of the same plant or multiple different closely related species onto the same plant. And I primarily wanted to do it with fruit trees, but for practice, I wanted to try something seasonal like tomatoes and potatoes that are actually really closely related. So if you graft them together and you do it right, they'll heal together and they'll be one plant, and you can get tomato fruit above ground and potato tubers underground on one plant. So it's space efficient to get both within the same space, though the idea is that yields will be decreased because while you normally have one plant that produces one or the other, you now have a plant that produces both and has to share its finite amount of resources across making both of them. But I thought it'd be a worthy experiment to try out, and I also thought, wouldn't it be cool if I grafted on multiple different types of tomato onto different stalks? So that is exactly what I did in my first time ever crafting. This video goes through the entire process, so the different chapters of the video you can find in the description are all split up by date that they were recorded, so that you can see from the very beginning of actually doing the graft and step by step how I did that, all the way up until I harvested the tomatoes all the way at the end of the season. So if you just want to see how to create your own tomato plants, you can go to that relevant chapter. If you just want to see what the outcome was at the end, then skip to some of the later dates and see all of the ripe tomatoes on these tomato bushes. Oh, and I should clarify, these are typically called Pomatoes, since tomato and potato, or some people call them Ketchup and Fries plants, which is kind of fun because you can make ketchup and fries from the produce from one plant. Now, because this is a grafted union, if you harvested the seeds from a tomato that was produced with potato roots, it would still just be normal tomato seeds because that's what that branch was genetically programmed to make. It was genetically programmed to make this yellow tomato with these yellow tomato seeds. So you can't be getting seeds of something like a tomato plant. If you want a tomato plant, you have to make it yourself by combining a potato plant and a tomato plant. And you can go to a local nursery and buy both of those, I assume. I've never bought a potato plant before because potatoes are really easy to grow. But tomatoes you can really commonly buy, and tomatoes are pretty easy to grow from seed as well, in my opinion. But potatoes grow a lot faster than tomatoes do, so you do have to take that into account with your timing. So I started my tomato seeds at the end of January 2024. So by the time May rolled around when I would actually be doing my grafting, I would have like these pretty decently sized tomato plants that I could take off like a sucker or two to graft onto potatoes. I mean, you could always start them a little bit later and just cut it off from the stem and then graft on the entire plant onto a potato, but I wanted to just borrow a part of these plants while still having like a full pure tomato plant that I could plant elsewhere. I didn't want to kill them for the purpose of putting them onto potato roots. I wanted to get both. I was greedy, what can I say? And as for potatoes, you would typically not be using potato seeds, but rather seed potatoes, which is a different thing. It's basically just like actual full potatoes that are ready to grow into their own plant. But you wouldn't be planting something like this. This is just a solid potato that is not ready for any growth. What you want is a seed potato that is actually growing from different eyes on it, kind of like this. This is a red apple potato, and this was harvested in 2023, so this is well over a year old now, and you can see how kind of shriveled up and wrinkly it is. Like, there's not really much left that's good for eating on there as far as I'm aware. It's pretty much just good for planting, and it's used what energy it's had to make this, because it wants to grow, it wants to be planted, it wants to root. And you plant something like this, and it'll grow so much faster than a tomato plant. So at the end of April was the end of my last university semester, and then I was going to be away in Texas and Louisiana for about 2.5 weeks. So I figured, what if I plant a couple seed potatoes before I leave on my trip, and then I graft them when I'm back, because I left at the end of April and I got back in mid-May. I did my grafting on May 14th. So just before I left on my trip is when I selected my seed potatoes that I'll be using for this, which are just potatoes that I harvested last year. I chose 3 of these types of potatoes, which are called red apple potatoes, like hence the red skin, and 1 Yukon gold potato. That one didn't end up being successful, so you could say this experiment was just with these kinds of potatoes, the red apple potatoes. If you buy seed potatoes from the store, they're typically going to be something of about this size, and then maybe have like a few eyes of growth around them, with an eye of growth being like this. This one seems to have 2. 1, 2. Right next to one another. It's kind of hard to tell, kind of hard to differentiate them. There you can see it a little bit better. And as long as there's one eye, it can grow into a full plant. So let's say that there's an eye over here and an eye over here. I could cut this in half and then plant like 2 different plants. And a little potato like this can still grow into like a crazy big beautiful plant. But considering I had my potatoes from last year to choose from, I just chose the ones that look like the biggest, the healthiest, and already had like the craziest, longest stalks. Because I figured they might be like the most vigorous and have like the biggest head start and be the best result here. So the 4 potatoes that I chose looked like this. And these were the buckets that I was going to put them into. So I filled them up with dirt. I personally like to use a peat-based solution for a dirt, because like my tomato plants seem to really love it. But I honestly don't think potatoes are going to care that much. Just use whatever, I guess. I don't know, I'm not an expert. I planted them about 8 centimeters in, or about 3 inches, since you're not actually supposed to bury potatoes super deep. That did mean that some of the ones with like super crazy big stalks already couldn't be fully buried, but that was fine. I wasn't going to bury the actual seed potato itself so much deeper just for the sake of burying the stalks. And it worked out fine, like they grew completely fine. Some of the stalks that were exposed to open air just didn't seem to continue growing into like a full standalone stalk from there, instead sprouted new ones, but they seemed okay and perfectly healthy, so who am I to complain? So I thoroughly soaked them, and I had family looking after them while I was away on my trip. That was on April 19th. April 28th, so just 9 days later, I was sent this photo. So potatoes grow pretty fast. So while I was spending the day getting completely drenched by a storm in the Louisiana bayous, my potatoes seemed to be growing like very healthily, very fast. Then late in the second week of May, I got home. I got ready to plant my pure potatoes, which were so incredibly eager to be planted, like, oh my goodness, they had grown so much in cold storage. And my potatoes that I had already planted before my trip had already grown to be friggin' insane. If I do this again in future years, I think the time span between initially planting the potatoes and grafting the potatoes could be a little bit shorter. Because yeah, they had already grown like crazy, and most of their stalks were already much thicker than most of the Tomato Scions that I could provide. But that's what happens when you're away for 2.5 weeks and you have to budget around that, I guess. So if you want to make your own tomato plants at home, you're going to need, of course, potato and tomato that you grow and are ready to combine, with the tomato starred much earlier and the potato starred much sooner because it's going to grow a whole lot faster. You're going to want a sharp and sterilized grafting knife to cut both the potato and the tomato and cut them into the proper shape to insert them into one another. You're probably going to want tomato cages down the line or some sort of support for as they grow because they are going to get kind of crazy. You are going to need grafting tape. This is something that I just ordered on Amazon, and it comes in like a roll of tape-like stuff, but it's kind of like saran wrap. It's that kind of plasticky substance that just sticks to itself, and that's to seal in moisture, because after you cut off part of a tomato stalk, it doesn't have roots anymore. It is going to slowly dry out until it heals successfully onto the potato. So the grafting tape both secures the graft in place and seals in moisture to prevent it drying out before it heals on and gets access to roots again. Then you're going to want something to actually keep the grafting tape on there. I like to use a little bit of electrical tape because that's usually pretty sturdy. So I will wrap the grafting tape around several loops to keep it tight and seal in the moisture, and then put a little bit of electrical tape around just to actually secure it in place so that the grafting tape doesn't peel off. If you are grafting on multiple types of tomato, you are going to want labels so that you actually know what's where. I just used little skewer stakes that I wrote on so I knew what each individual stalk was. You are going to want a spray bottle to actually be able to keep things humid, because again, they're going to be slowly drying out and dying. They're going to be losing moisture through transpiration, and you want to keep them in a humid environment to keep them from drying out before they heal on and get their own roots. And you don't need it, but an enclosure to keep in moisture will definitely help. I've seen YouTube videos before of some that would have tomato plants that they would keep in a moist environment, like surrounded in, say, a plastic bag, like a bread bag or something like that, that you can just slide over all the stalks and spray moisture in there just to keep it nice and damp and humid, and ones that they just leave out exposed to open air. And the ones that were kept in the moist environment were the ones that were staying, looking healthier longer, whereas the ones that were left in the dry environment would start to droop and look a little bit sad. But they'd pick themselves up and be a-okay if the graft was done alright, whereas the ones in the humid environment, they would need to be slowly acclimated to the dry air, so the bag being slowly taken off or the humidity gradually decreased, What I used was my 3D printer enclosure. Because my actual 3D printer here, if my camera follows, hi camera, this way. Yeah, my 3D printer here, I don't use the enclosure for. I just leave it exposed to open air. So I just conveniently happen to have like a big chamber that's all about regulating the temperature and humidity and all that inside, that has a see-through opening so that you can see the 3D print that I can use to let light get through, and it works out perfectly as a little grafting healing chamber. So I wanted to play it the safe way and keep them in a more humid environment because this was my first time doing this, and I figured better safe than sorry. But maybe in a future year, maybe I'll just try with them exposed to open air, and then I wouldn't have to like slowly acclimate them away from the high humidity. Because after they've successfully healed, you are going to want to like slowly take them out of that environment, so it's not just a sudden shock. But of course, you don't need to do that if they're already exposed to open air, but then there's maybe not as great of chance of success, but it's up to you. After you initially graft them together, you also don't want to be immediately overexposing them to light. Energy that they're spending on photosynthesizing is water that they're consuming, and less focus that they're having on healing together. So what I did is I just covered my tomatoes with a towel over the enclosure the very first day, and then I have a grow light with like different settings, like 20%, 40%, 60% of its light. And I would just up that by 1 each day. So like no light first day, then 20% the next day, then 40%, and I was just able to like slowly get them used to light that way. And it seemed to work very well. And then the actual grafting tape and electrical tape, I took it off after 2 weeks. I'm pretty sure that's everything you need to know going into it. All right, let's go back in time now. But before we get too carried away here, I do want to show the things that I'm going to be using for scions here, my various tomatoes. I have given away over half of my tomatoes at this point, so this room is finally a little bit more manageable. There's still a lot of plants, as you can see. So I've kind of grouped them based on what type they are. I have a couple beefsteak tomatoes over here. I have some Germany tomatoes, some Wilma tomatoes they're called, that I got from Germany. Some better bush tomatoes, including ones that are already fruiting here in mid-May because I started those ones super early. I have some lollybomb tomatoes here in various pot sizes. I have no idea what that one is, but it's something. I have a genuine tomato, a Creole tomato from Louisiana, some Indigo rose tomatoes, which is a type of black tomato, some Thai pink egg tomatoes. I have a couple pink brandywine tomatoes. Little ones like this I'm probably not going to take branches off of, just like these crazier ones that can afford to lose some branches. And then my bazillion 2013 yellow tomatoes, where I didn't think that the seeds were going to grow because they were over 10 years old. They were from 2013, and a whole bunch of them grew. I think I had 40 of these. There's 13 left here, I believe, so I've done a good job getting rid of a lot of them. I do also have different pearls here. I have my amber pearls and I have my golden pearls, which are in the same plant family. They're nightshades, and my symbolo here, so they're in the same plant family as tomatoes and potatoes. Maybe one day I'd try grafting something like that to a potato for fun, but for now, as I'm trying this out for the first time, I think I'll pass this time. Maybe another day. You can also try grafting peppers, but it is a little bit harder. Tomatoes and potatoes are more related than potatoes and peppers. Peppers are a little bit more distant. They are in the same plant family as well, a different genus. And I have heard tales of people doing it when I've researched it online, but it doesn't seem like a super common thing or something that would give you the best odds of success. So I'm just gonna go ahead and do tomatoes this time, and maybe top some of these ones that are getting really tall, and that'll force them to bush out a little bit more, and that might be good for the plant's health as well. Maybe I should also take the top off of this one that's kind of falling over and I was hoping would pick itself up, but doesn't quite seem to yet. Maybe I'll just liberate that from it and force it to bush out a little bit. So, yeah. Alright, I want to start out with this red potato plant, because I don't need to justify my reasons to you. Get off my case. So, if I go ahead and use the caliber here, and just pull it out, oh, it's in the negatives now. Come on, 0? Yeah, oh, and I'm getting another low battery warning. That seems to happen a lot as I'm recording stuff here. So, yeah, we're probably going to want to start with these 3 stalks here. And I don't know how many tomato plants I have that I'm willing to yoink branches off of. I do kind of like the way a lot of them are growing. So I could always do like 3 and then just completely cut off the other stalks. We shall see what my plant inventory there ends up looking like. So, let's go ahead and measure these. So let's say I put that onto there, and that is approximately 0.2 inches. So one is about 0.2. I kind of have to get in at this angle where you can't really see it very well. This one here is about 0.27 or 0.3, and then, wow, out!
Darn you. And this one is about 0.31. Okay, so now I can take this caliber and I can go up to our Scions and have a look-see at what things might be a good fit for 0.2, 0.27, and 0.31. Or whatever it is here. I should have a better memory for these things. That one is about 0.24. I could take that off. And the nice thing about if I took that one off is I'm not really going to do all that much damage in terms of it going upward, because it's already got another sucker coming out here. It'll be fine. I mean, any of the ones I take stuff off of, they'll be fine. Look how tall some of them are. On closer inspection, that one that I was looking at is more like 0.14. So I might just go one at a time here. It might be a little bit difficult wrapping around a whole bunch of grafting tape when I've got these in the way, but I will try my best here. So I think I'm going to want to cut at the rootstock first, take off some of these leaves on the side here, and it looks like it might be making a new shoot out the side, which is not really what I want, so I'm going to go ahead and just take that off, because I don't want it to make potato leaves and potato stalks. I want it to make tomato stalks, if I can do that. So I might do my grafts decently high, because I'm probably going to want to bury them decently far in the ground, and you never want to bury the actual graft point. Because if you bury the graft point and the tomato starts being underground, then the tomato can start making its own roots, and then you get less potato roots and less potato tubers. That's not what we want. We want it to be completely potato roots. So I might graft decently high, and then when I go to bury it, I can bury it a decent smidge farther than it's buried right now, and then just also have a little bit of height to work with here. And something else that I should grab now that I think about it is actually some sticks, some stakes to put in there and hold up the Scions that I'm putting on. Unfortunately, I just ran out of my twist ties that I use for gardening stuff, but I have some other ones that I can grab. Do you ever know anybody that keeps literally every twist tie from any package thing they get ever? Couldn't be me. Anyway, those and some sticks that I don't actually know what these are for. I guess just skewers for like barbecuing stuff or something or other. With the idea being that I can not block the camera and stick this in alongside this stalk when I graft the new one on there. And then maybe just put like a twist tie around it and keep it upright a little bit, because it'll start to droop, because it'll start to dry out and be like, what the heck, I've been cut off from my source plant. Now when you do this, you typically want to do it relatively quickly. You don't want to leave your Scions out for too long. So this stalk here, ideally you want it to be as clean a cut as possible. You don't want to do too much damage to the actual plant. So a clean cut, just kind of right across there. As long as I don't press too hard, I shouldn't have to worry about cutting myself. So now you can see, like, this is just a flat surface here. But then we're going to want to do a cut in. I'm going to do a cleft graft, which literally means we're cutting this into a V, and then we can slide the Scion into that little V that we made. In fact, maybe I can zoom in here. Whoa, get the... Oh, no, that's just straight zoom in. Down! Like that! Let's go get a Scion. Alright, I've got a tomato Scion here to try and put on. Whoa, but now we're like super zoomed in. So you can't really see much of anything. And I've just focused on this corner here by tapping it there accidentally. We have a tomato Scion. We're going to want to take off these flowers. We don't want to focus on making flowers right now. I probably should have just cut that with my knife. And reduce the amount of leaves that it is going to focus on trying to keep alive here. So just try to do pretty clean cuts. So I can take that off. I could probably take this one off here too, but I have to leave the new growth. You can't just take any random tomato branch and shove it on there. It has to be something that has new growth that can keep going up. Otherwise, like, how's it gonna keep on going? So now that we have the V there, we're gonna want to cut this down to a point. So let's just go ahead and try to, fail it there, but that's fine. We have lots of stock to work with here. It's no big deal. I probably shouldn't have done that. Here, let's just cut it flat like that. This will be fertilizer for the plant. It's no big deal. Let's just cut it down to a point. Try to be pretty careful here. So it's a living tissue known as the cambium layer, one of the first layers here, that you want to be touching on both sides. Like you can see the little, focus. You can see kind of like the darker green areas here on the outsides of the stalk. That's what we're going to want to be touching on both the rootstock and the Scion. I'm going to take that off because it's a little bit sloppy at the bottom. As long as I don't press too hard, I shouldn't risk cutting myself. And I think it's a little bit sloppy again. Here. It's nice to get a long scion like this, so I have extra play for and leeway for these mistakes that I'm kind of making. So maybe use a different part of the knife. Yeah, like that. There we go. Still took off a little bit at the bottom there, but oh well. Don't think it needs to be perfect per se. So let's just take this down to a point. Something like that. So it'll fit nicely into our little V, our cleft that we made. And now that looks really rough. And I'm trying again. Oh, I'm also now noticing it's not really focused in. There we go. You know why it keeps on coming off at the end? And this is my first time doing this. Here, just take off a little smidge there. There, that should be pretty good as long as I cut off those bits here. Maybe I can cut it on a surface like over here. There we go. There we go. Something like that-ish. So we have a point, and we can shove it into that cleft. Now, I think this scion is actually a little bit thinner than the rootstock here, but I will make do how I can here. Probably also going to want to make sure that your hands are clean before this. Don't really want to be getting dirt into this. And then we are just going to want to shove this scion into the rootstock like that. And hopefully I'm not blocking the camera too much here. And that V should basically hold it in place. Then we're going to want to seal it and also hold it in place a little bit better with some grafting tape, which I don't know if I can put this whole roll around here. So I'm just going to pull out a whole bunch, cut it with my knife, and start to wrap this around. Also, another really important thing that I don't have is labels. You want to label these branches for what they are. They say the dullest pencil is better than the sharpest memory. I mean, as fun as it would be to have multiple different types of tomatoes on a potato, and then what type of tomatoes are going to be, it's just going to be like, surprise! Who knows? But this is a yellow tomato, just in case I forget to label this later. It's all on camera. That's right, I got you. I got you on camera. So hopefully I'm not going to forget what these are. If my 3D printer was actually working right now, I would 3D print myself some labels. I think I pulled way too long a thing of grafting tape. Whoops. It does not need to be this long. Oh well, I may as well use the full thing now. I'll try to do these last couple loops slightly tighter. And maybe I'll grab just a tiny little smidge of electrical tape, just to make sure that this stays on. It does kind of stick to itself, but it's not perfect. And you can see it's starting to peel there. So I'm going to grab just a little smidge of electrical tape. Way less than that. Just a little bit. Going to cut it with my knife. If I can here. And then I'm going to use that just to ensure that that is staying on there. You can probably use other things for this, but I've just kind of gotten used to using electrical tape. So, yeah, and that's just going to ensure that that's not going anywhere. I got another low power warning, so hopefully it was actually recording this whole time. And I'm still going to be working on this a little bit here. I'm just going to spray these leaves a little bit, keep them damp while I work away here. This might be the perfect opportunity to use these. I believe they are better bush tomatoes. I did not get them in this pot. I grew them from a seed. But their parent that they came from this red pot that was labeled better bush. So I assume these are better bush tomatoes. Yeah, I said this caliber might not exactly be the best. 0. I'll try it one more time. Otherwise, I'm eyeballing it. You probably don't want to eyeball it when you're grafting. Negatives, again. Alright, I'm cutting this off. Never mind, I don't have my knife. I'm not cutting anything. I'll grab my knife. I will go to one of these other thin stalks. So let's go ahead and turn this a little bit and maybe get these out of the way. How would I do that? And then maybe graft onto this thin stalk here. So this one I'm just going to cut part way. And then I can always graft onto it in a little bit if I want. Put that to the side here. I'm going to want to remove its leaf too, so that it's not sending as much energy that way. So hopefully it just kind of gives up on this stalk. Unless I grab something new to it and it's like, hey, there's new leaves! I want to grow from this! And let's, yeah, cut this about there, across. Put that there. No more leaves. I'm sorry. No more. Ideally a clean cut, not a peel, is what you'd want. And let's go ahead and cut down the center. Make our V. Try to center it as best we can. There we go, a little V. I'm gonna go grab a scion. Alright, I ended up cutting this scion in a place that looked like pretty thick here. I'm gonna want to take off these branches. Wow, create a little pile. This is right in my pile of twist ties. What am I doing? Good to keep things separate. So yeah, let's go ahead and cut off these branches. Less for it to focus on. Cut off this branch and this sucker. We don't really need it growing those. Just need it to keep on growing upwards where it is here. As nice as the flowers are, that might be a little bit much in terms of energy commitment right now. Those could have yielded tomatoes, but that plant is still going to make so many more. It's fine. And maybe we'll get some tomatoes from this plant. So yeah, just a few leaves at the top, something like that. Then let's see about taking this down into a point. And as I do this, I should hopefully continue to get better at it. Just drop the little pieces in there. They'll break down, become plant food. I'm sure there'll be no complaints from the potato. Well, the pomato. I guess it won't be a potato anymore. Will it? Come on. Whoa. I'm making a little bit of a mess here. Come on, just a little bit deeper in. There we go. There we go. That's a little bit better. Something like that. Maybe a little bit more in here. Whoa. Use another section of the knife. There we go. There, something like that-ish, probably. I don't know. We've got our point. Got our little leaves at the top. Potatoes, you are in the way. I mean, I could always just cut all of them off here if I really want to. Yeah. Kind of press those up against one another, make sure that there's contact. Grafting tape, I learned my lesson. Let's use a lot less this time. Just a little smidge. And you can see that that one's kind of coming apart. That one's not quite as tight. If we zoom with the power of technology, you can see that that one's kind of coming apart a little bit. I could always cut slightly deeper and... Oh, actually, no, that looks like it's fine. So here we're going to want to start out pretty tightly with the grafting tape. And my hand is basically blocking that. Yeah. Here. I'll try to do something like that. And let's try... Yeah, maybe it would be easier if I took off all these other stalks first. Alright, get shoved in there. Try to put this on pretty tight here. This one doesn't feel quite as snug and nice as the other one did. The other one felt pretty nice. This one feels pretty slippery and all over the place. Like this tape is kind of sliding down the stalk instead of staying up where I want it to stay. What's up with that, huh? Let's do a wrap right around here. Oh, man. Now it's starting to feel a little bit better as I wrap it around. Kind of start to tighten it up. Or something like that. I don't think it's going to stay on there though, which is why I'm going to do as I did before and take just a little smidge of electrical tape. You're not going to want to have this on there long term because eventually the stalk will grow and you don't want to suffocate it. But just for while the graft is trying to take let's try to make sure that this isn't going anywhere. Hopefully, that's pretty sealed. I'll write in it. There's definitely a much better way to label these than this, but oh well. I'll just wrap it around here for now. I think that'll get the message across. 2013 yellow, right, better bush. This is a better bush, and that is like the worst sticker wrapping ever. Holy crap, that sucks. But hey, it's better than nothing. Do I want to try grafting something to this? This is another thinner stalk. Maybe I will. How about this one here? Because this is kind of insane. And it's semi-thick there. Here, let's cut it about here-ish. There we go. So yeah, I'll probably try to put this right onto there. Yeah, the Scion is definitely thinner. There's gotta be a better angle I can do this at, right? I don't know. Yeah, the Scion is definitely thinner, but they are close. So let's see here. Cut off this branch. Come on, clean cut, please. And it's still on there. That's not a clean cut. Ah! Well, oops. And it's also got a new sucker growing there. I wonder if I should almost leave that on just for another chance. As long as energy is going up somewhere, whoa, the current bit of new growth at the top should be okay. So I'm going to take off that sucker so it can channel all its resources to just the main one there. Whoa, and I'll hit my head on the grow light a little bit. And then maybe I'll even take off this branch here. Oh, and those flowers, those flower buds. I can focus just on the few leaves that it has and continuing to grow upwards. There we go, take off the flower buds. There.
Alright, here's some commentary in post-production because it seems like I appear to be missing a significant amount of footage. It's almost like I have no experience in this field, and I do video game content instead, so that's neither here nor there. There's a few grafts that happened off camera. You can see the one droopy one there is from one tomato plant that I had that grew so tall that it like fell over the top and it was picking itself up. So that one Scion was actually pointed upward, like I flipped it upside down. So it was shaped like a U before, but now it's shaped like an N because of the way that I grafted it. And I grafted them so high up on this one because I thought I should try to match the thickness where I can, so I should go a little bit higher on the potato stalk where it's a bit thinner, and then still grab like relatively thick tomato stalks. Turns out that doesn't actually matter as long as you match like one side of the cambium. So the cambium is like right underneath the skin there, essentially. If you're doing it on a fruit tree, then it's the layer, it's this green layer right underneath the bark. So as long as you match up one side, that's fine. So because I didn't have any more thick Scions, what I decided to do here was I was actually going to put two in and see what happened. So there's going to be one on the left side and one on the right side. So you don't need to have the Scion be like in there centered. And if it's significantly thinner than the rootstock anyway, you don't want to center it because then both sides of the cambium are not going to be lined up. So as long as you get it in like one extreme side, so let's say I made a V and I had this really thin tomato Scion, I would just put it to one side so that it's flush with one side of the potato stalk, not shoved right into the center. So that way it can still have cambium contact on one side there. So with that idea, I tried to do the twofer here, where I grabbed two thin tomato Scions, and I put both of them in the same slot, so you had one on either side. You can't really do more than two, because again, like you put one in the center there, there's not going to be any cambium lining up. You want it to line up on the outside there. So two is the most that you can do. I don't know what kind of secret ninjutsu you can do to get like three. And that's what I decided to do here. And a little bit of spoiler warning, it worked. Both of these took. So on this one, this was the only plant that I put an indigo rose tomato on, which is a dark purple tomato that is it basically looks black at a distance. It's so dark purple. That's the green label over there. I put one of the yellow ones, as you can see with the yellow label, and I put one of the better bush ones, as you can see with the red label, to correspond to their colors. The red one did not take on this one. This one eventually died, but this plant successfully had black tomatoes, well, dark purple tomatoes, and 3 stalks of yellow tomatoes. One on one potato stalk and 2 on another individual potato stalk, being this one. So I think if I do this again in 2025, I will keep some of these lessons in mind And there was also another one that I grafted where I didn't quite do a cleft graft where I cut like right in the center of the rootstock in general. I more like cut into it from the side. So one side was exposed and the skin was intact on the other side. I just kind of shoved in the Tomato Scion that was significantly thinner from the side. And that one took it, and that one did really well as well. So I don't think any of this like super high grafting is something that I'm gonna do anymore. If I'm working with significantly thinner scions, then I'm just gonna like put them into the side of the rootstock here, rather than trying to match up the diameter as perfectly as I can. Also, the two that I'm putting in here are more of these 2013 yellow tomatoes, because I just have so many of them. I have zero idea what variety of tomato this is. It just came from a baggie that was labeled 2013 yellow tomato, as I mentioned earlier in the video. So I didn't think that they were gonna grow. Turns out tomato seeds are viable for a long time. I got a whole bunch, I gave a bunch away. And there's a whole bunch here that before giving them away, I would liberate some little bits of new growth from them for use in my pomato experiments. So most of the tomatoes growing on these potato roots end up being yellow tomatoes. And oh my goodness, they're so good. They're like really sweet. They've got to be like one of my favorite types of cherry tomatoes now. And I have zero idea what the actual variety name is.
And this is a bit of a new experiment. And it seems like the kind of thing that wouldn't work. But apparently it does. Or it can if you do it right. Okay, flowers. Just might just have to pinch yourself with my fingers so I don't take off the new growth by accident. There we go. Don't worry about making flowers right now. Do that after you're healed, please. This goes in here. And then spritz, 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 spritz. Yeah, this spray bottle has seen better days. But hey, it still works, technically. Putting the towel over, something like that. Do you still want like an opening somewhere? You're still gonna need airflow. I can always open like the side that thing has. All right, what next? All right, I'm thinking the big one. Now that I've been practicing a lot, and then I can do this one last with some scions that I have left. And this big one has actually been, well, all the potatoes, but especially this big one, has been dealing with a bit of an aphid infestation. So, I mean, I'm not keeping this, like, this is gonna be tossed, so it's not a super big deal. One way to deal with aphids, just take off the entire top of the plant and replace it with something else. So I think I'm gonna do kind of like I did on that previous stock, and I'm going to put a couple things in there and see if they take, because I don't have anything this thick unless I cut like one of my super massive plants that I've been growing since November all the way until May right now, right at the base. And I don't really want to do that. I don't know if that would heal all that much because that's a lot of plant at the top to support. Anyway, yeah, I kind of wish I was here as these were growing. I could have done this a little bit earlier. Oh well, we're experimenting. And that one is so thick that the whole sticker basically fits on. And then spritz, 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 spritz. Well, no more aphid issue on this potato. Alright, we have one final potato plant here to work with. This one has 5 stalks coming out, but again, they're a little bit on the thicker side. It would have been nice to have done this earlier. I mean, it's also kind of nice to do it now from the perspective of, you can tell that it's now a very established plant. It has a very established root system, so it has new things put on the top, and it's probably going to be like, oh, I'm missing my top, and now I have all this roots down here, I need to support something, heal over, and then the tomatoes grow vigorously, hopefully. So, I'll go up and see about just grabbing some thick scions in general, I think. Alright, I grabbed basically one of the thickest stems that I have still from one of my better bush tomatoes, one of those massive ones I've been growing since November. This is the stalk that was nearly hitting the ceiling. And there is a little tomato that's developing there right now, but unfortunate that it won't be able to continue developing. I took that off so poorly, holy crap. That's not half bad, right? Something like that. Let me just spritz. Alright, so I grabbed another yellow one here, and it is significantly thinner than any of the stalks that I'd be working with here. So I think I'm going to try something different. Rather than doing a cleft graft like right down the center like that, I'm going to try just slicing into the side a little bit. Just enough that this can shove in there, and then the cambiums can line up. Because if it's right centered, the graft is most likely going to fail because there isn't going to be contact on the cambium. That is going to be like the most important thing here. So, and this is the branch that was basically hitting the ceiling in the sunroom there. So this buys me a little bit more time by taking this one off. And there's a little bit of flowers there that I should take off. Here we go. Put that in there. Plant food. And yeah, I can just try maybe putting it in another stalk so that they spread out a little bit more. Because, yeah, I don't think I'm going to use every single one of these. Like, I think something like 3 is going to be more than enough. This is already kind of pushing it with the whole multiple different stalks thing. So we'll leave that one be. And I'll slice into this one here. Like this. Yeah, this knife is definitely getting duller. There we go. Take that off. Take that off. And maybe I want to take off these other ones so they get out of the way. Or at least this one here. Is what I'll do. And then maybe I'll try a third one there. Mayhap. Take off that leaf. Then let's bonk my head on my little grow light again. Go ahead and shave this down. Whoa, that's fine. We have so much extra stock to work with here, so it's fine if there's some mistakes like that. It's not a super big deal. Here we go. Whoa, probably shouldn't quite peel like that. Okay, get just under the skin. There, something like that-ish. Peel off just a little bit more there. Yeah, not exactly the cleanest cut, but I think it should do. So, the thickness of this is about halfway in. So I'm going to try slicing into this just about halfway. Try like a weird cleft graft thing. So I'm going to try and do. So if I can get this to about halfway, just kind of make an incision in the side like that. Will this now somewhat cleanly fit into there? I mean, it's kind of hard to keep it open. Yeah, I almost have to open it up a little bit more at the top, just to actually be able to get in here. Okay, here we go. Now slide down. There, something like that. And it's in the side there. Hopefully shouldn't go too much in, because then it won't be lined up. Typically want the outside to the outside to line up. There's a little smidge sticking out. I think that's a little loose smidge, and I don't think I'm getting that in there. Alright, well, there's 2 on there. I may as well do a 3rd on this last stalk here. And then if they all take, they're pretty spread out. I'll go find a scion. Alright, so if I do something like I did for that yellow one, I might be able to get away with putting on a thinner stalk. So I decided, screw it. I'm trying that beefsteak. I'm trying a bigger tomato. I don't know if this will produce anything, but we'll see. I managed to cut it like right underneath a sucker, so it should be able to keep on growing upward. It took off like its highest point. So let's take off some flowers here. And you can see that this is where like the new growth is, so it can keep going upward. And some flower stalks that's making from that pinch off the biggest one. There's some very extremely tiny ones there that I don't know if I can quite get. Well, maybe I can. Kind of pinch them off. There we go. And then, I don't know, just put on this full thing. Maybe just take off part of this branch. I don't know, I kind of grabbed this at an awkward spot, I'm realizing in hindsight. Maybe that's not exactly the best. Here, let's take that off. Leave part of this branch so it has a decent few leaves left. And yeah, let's try sticking that onto here. Let's see. Let's see what I can do here. So I'm gonna have to get this right the first time because I don't really have much play with this. So yeah, that's about a little bit more than halfway into the potato stalk. So let's see here. Wow. Get that nice cinematic camera angle. If I cut into this about yay far, I don't have to cut in super deep because this doesn't go super far. This right here. Then let's expose the insides. Take this slow and steady. I only really get one go at this one. Oh, there we go. It's a pretty nice cut. And the other side. Be very careful not to take off too much. That would be very bad. Come on. Maybe I shouldn't risk it and just call it at this. That might work. Something like that. And then, if I put my arm around the camera so I don't block it, and then I shove that in there, press down, something like that-ish. I can probably cut very slightly further into the rootstock, like deeper down. There, just a little smidge. Let's not overdo it. Just so I can shove this in all the way here. There we go. It's so close to the wall that it's kind of hard to work with. Something like that. the two very long stalks and the one much lower down one. Alright, let's label this. Where did I put my pen? Here it is. I'll label this as beefsteak. Let's put this in here. Like that. Let's spritz them all one last time here. Now these other ones are staying up so far, apart from the ones that were already bent over before. They're staying up so far. We'll see if it stays that way. I'll check on them over the coming days. Let's just make it really humid in here in general by getting all across the walls. And I think I'll give these potatoes a little bit of water. I left my watering can upstairs. I'm just gonna give each of these potatoes a good smidge of water here. Try not to hit those tomatoes. Just to make sure they've got lots of moisture, that when they heal, they can share with the tomatoes. Now, if you want to keep it really, really humid, you would just do the bag strat that I've seen some people do. Like, even doing this that I'm doing right now is probably a little bit overkill, but I'm just thinking better safe than sorry. But just filling like a bag with a whole bunch of moisture like that, like from a spray bottle, and putting them right over the Tomato Scions is going to keep them very, very humid. But then you kind of have to slowly acclimate them. I am going to have to acclimate these ones too. I'll do that. I'll drag it closer to the light. Ooh, it's kind of stuck to the ground. There we go. Drag it closer to the actual light. But I don't really want them getting much light right now. So maybe just for tonight, I'll put the towel over it. Or maybe I'll just turn off the grow light. That works too. Off. There we go. Now they don't really get much light. Just probably don't really need to put the towel on them. This should be fine. Then I can leave this open a little bit for some airflow. I can always open the side for, I guess the sides. No, that's a pocket. It's some other side that I can open for some airflow too. I think it's on the other end there. I believe, if I recall, yeah, something like that. Now I have a whole bunch of prospective Pomato plants here, or Ketchup Fries plants. And yeah, I'll give you some updates in the coming days and see what they look like and if they take and if I've successfully created these multi-species plants.
Alright, it is currently Tuesday, the 28th of May, so it has been 2 weeks since initially grafting my Pomato plants. And it seems like some of the droopy ones actually made it back. There's one that seems like this is pretty much for sure toast. The stem is starting to get pretty dry. I don't think that guy's making it. But literally every single other one seems to have taken. Some of them have even gotten pretty vigorous and even grown a decent bit in the past couple of weeks because, again, when these were first grafted on, most of them were even smaller than this, and now this looks like this, and it's like, wow. Many of them even have flower buds on them already. Like, if my camera can make it out there, yeah, there's some flower buds on that one. There's probably some somewhere on this one. I know I spotted a couple in there. There's a couple developing in there. So this was actually a pretty good success rate. It looks like it's pretty much just this one where I bandaged it up a little bit extra there. So yeah, this stem wasn't exactly the greatest here, and you can see the potato has been trying to regrow new stalks in different places. This one that was just a singular stalk now wants to grow different stalks at this point. So I'm gonna have to cut those off. But yeah, because it's been 2 weeks, I think it's about time to remove this grafting tape because it should be fused together. If I was grafting something like fruit trees, like I've also been trying to do this season, then the grafting tape should stay on probably until the next season. But for things like this, after about a couple weeks, it should be a good time to remove the grafting tape. So I'm just gonna set this here, whoa, if my camera can stay steady, and kind of have a look at what some of these are like. Also, I made stakes like this just to label them all. I used a thicker Sharpie, then I was like, oh, well, that's probably not a good idea. Let's just use a thinner Sharpie. There are ones like this where there are a couple of grafts on there, but they're both the same kind. So I may as well label them as my 2013 yellow tomato. No idea what variety they actually are, so just labeling them as 2013 yellow tomato. There we go. So it looks something like that. And I see that's a potato leaf. I'm just gonna go ahead and pick that off. Yeah, so this is now one plant. Oh, I can see there's another stalk coming in there. I want all the energy going to the tomato, so nope. And if we're to look at the back side, yeah, so it's kind of fused in together like that. Whoa, the failed one doesn't even, okay, doesn't even quite stay on there. I mean, it looks pretty decent as well. Little bit there that I'll pick off. I can still give it a chance, but I'm pretty sure this is toast. Yeah, so it kind of looks like that. It's not quite as aligned. Like it's a little bit lopsided here. Like there are parts where it looks like they may well have fused together, and like this would have wilted and died earlier, I think, if there was nothing going on there. But yeah, I think that one is pretty toast.
Something like that. Yeah, that actually looks really smooth. Yeah, look at these. Full of life here. Amazing. Let's look at the other side here. This, is that the beginning of a stem? Let's just pick that off just in case. Yeah. I see this one wanting to grow a new stalk down here, so I am just not going to let it. There, pulled that off. So you can see what I just pulled off, and you can also see some roots coming out of there. The roots are fine, we like the roots, just not new stalks. Yeah, despite being lopsided like that, it seems to have taken just fine because there was still cambial contact. I'll leave that there for now, as long as it doesn't try to grow into a new stalk. So it looks like it started trying to regrow a new stalk here. Yeah, it definitely did. Got a little bit suffocated by the tape. I'm just gonna pick that off. And this was one that looks like I did lopside as well, because that's not quite centered. Not quite the same diameter. Whoa. That is definitely out to the one side. But look, 2 weeks later, it is a completely healthy bit of tomato here. It's grown since when I first put it in, so yeah, let me just stake this so I will continue to know what the heck it is. There we go. Oh, that's a little root coming out there, then I'll cover up. There we go. Look at that. All right, here's the ones that I grafting waxed. But let's see here. Sorry, potato, but you are only going to get tomatoes to grow, is what's going to happen. So more energy into these, please. There we go. This one wanted to grow a new potato stalk too, but I won't let that happen. Yeah, so they realized that their stalks were cut off and wanted to do what they could to regrow. Hopefully now they should realize, hey, I have this that I can put energy into. I don't need to grow new potato stalks. Wow, I mean, I'm sure it'll keep trying. There we go. There's an attempted another stalk. So I'm just going to pick that off. Now it's looking a little bit droopy, a little bit stressed. So I'm gonna get my spray bottle. Up there. And other side, another 2013 yellow. There we go. Like that. Alright, last one here. My little twofer in one big stalk. I'm just doing this. Okay. Ah. Come on. There. Don't know what exactly that is. A little attempted root. It seems to have thought that that was either soil or similar to soil in the bag there. Well, not in the bag there, in the grafting tape. So it was actually getting moisture from there with a little tomato roots. Well, this should hopefully be fused together. Hopefully I should just be able to take this off. Because yeah, you do not really want roots there. There. Yeah, and that should hopefully be fused together into one plant. So let's go ahead and put a little stake in here to mark that. There we go, 2013 yellow. And there we have it. Pomato plants. I'm definitely surprised that all the grafts took, except for one. Like, I was not expecting this much of a success rate. Alright, it is the following day after removing the grafting tape from all the pomatoes here. It seems like letting in a little bit of dryness did make a couple more of them kind of droopy. Like maybe I should have left on the grafting tape for maybe another week, considering this one kind of bit the dust here. I did wrap some pruning wax around to see if that could seal on the moisture. This one looks pretty iffy, but it might make it. Both the yellow ones on either end here started getting droopy. I put grafting wax around both of them, and in force of habit, I guess, I did that one, even though that one looked just fine, so whoops. And they've since picked themselves up. They look fine. That one is definitely toast. That one didn't take. I mean, you can see that it kind of fused together, but it dried out there and didn't quite take. This is also the one that I kind of cut into a decent bit there, so that can be another factor there. But apart from that, everything else is taken, it seems. So this Pomato here is going to have red in the middle and yellow on either end. This one is going to have yellow here, red here, and who knows if it'll produce a single beefsteak one, any big red ones. I don't know. Let's see if it ends up doing so. And this one over here, we've got yellow, more yellow, and black. It would have been cool to have yellow, red, and black, but oh well, yellow and black. Well, technically dark purple, but basically black. Alright, it is currently the 5th of June now. I would plant these Pomatoes outside, but it's still insanely windy out there, so I'm going to wait for that to ease off a bit. I don't think I'm going to put this pruning wax on grafts anymore that I worry might be a little bit dry. Like this main one here does not exactly look super great anymore. It looks super dried there. This is still alive, but I am a little bit worried about it. And these ones here, it looks like this one started trying to root out the side, and the actual potato parts of the stem don't exactly look super great. So I took it off of these ones too. They look not quite as bad, but not exactly super great. Whereas the ones that just had grafting tape on them still look just fine. Those look okay. I have no issues with any of these ones. They're still okay. So yeah, I'm definitely not going to use this pruning wax anymore. One thing I've noticed about the 2013 yellow tomatoes is they get really tall and scraggly, like this one. So this better bush tomato, which is now incredibly bushy, is soon going to be overtaken by this 2013 yellow tomato that is just going to get really tall and scraggly, as they seem to do here. So yeah, but this has several flower buds on it that you can now make out, so maybe it'll start flowering soon. And it is incredibly bushy and healthy. Here's another one of those 2013 yellow ones that's, of course, getting super tall. That's the one that was bent over when I first grafted it on, and now look at it. It is very happy. This is getting pretty bushy here. It's another better bush one. And then the yellow ones on either side. I don't know if this one is gonna make it, but that's a duplicate. Well, there's two 2013 yellow ones on there, so it might just be a red one and a yellow one. But that's okay, if so. I'm kind of surprised how much the beefsteak one has grown. That one's actually doing pretty well from here as well. Don't know if that's going to produce anything, but we'll see here. Alright, well, they're still not planted in the ground, despite being the 6th of June. And there being, like, a plot right out there waiting for them in one of those raised beds. Because the wind is still behaving like it is a coastal city wind and not central Alberta wind. And I've noticed that this guy has kind of fallen over right onto my golden pearls plants. So I brought some tomato cages that I guess will fit into these pots for now, but I will also just use to like prop them up when they're out there. Alright, well this will hold for now. You can see kind of right where it bent down there. So that, given some time, should straighten out here. And yeah, I'll try to plant that tomato cage in a little bit deeper properly for something a little bit more to lean against. And I'll probably set up some stakes that I can tie them to as well, like I have for some of my tomato plants outside. Well, it is currently the 10th of June. It is now a little bit less windy, and now it might be appropriate to plant the Pomatoes here, which are desperately going to need some support once I plant them. This one is starting to flower over here. Definitely gonna need some water. So I figure I'll get these guys planted. This one keeps on trying to make some new stalks. Maybe I should let it at some point, depending on how this starts looking here. We'll see. We'll see how that develops. Other ones look okay. I keep on finding ones that are falling over like this one was earlier today before I stuck it onto some of these other plants. But I figure I'll get to digging here in a hot second. The truck's over there, that's at home. I'm working on that now as well. And I figure this is just a spot to put a tomato cage. I have a couple tomato cages. I'll put around a couple. I'll put them in a little 2x2 here, right next to my 2x2 of actual tomatoes over here, and get them planted in there. All right, so on pulling them all out here is where it becomes a little bit more evident how crazy all of them have got. So yeah, this beefsteak one here has, not beefsteak, the better bush one here has gotten really quite bushy. The 2013 yellow one has really shot on through. Like, those are the super tall and scraggly ones that are over there that you can't quite see. And the actual beefsteak one here is really starting to get bushy and get these far off branches, just like the plant that would have came from. It was either this or my other beefsteak one that I gave away that I would have taken the branch from. Must have been my other one. I don't see where I cut off on this one here. Then these guys here, we've got the yellow in the middle of the better bush, the red ones. So red in the middle of two yellows, and they're all doing pretty good here, it seems like. This is my iffy one that I should not have surrounded in wax, and I am a little bit concerned about. So I'm not sure if that's really gonna hold up. I'm definitely not putting wax like that on again. We'll see if this grows. I mean, it's clearly not dried out. It's clearly still alive at A-OK. And this one here, which is just a little bit everywhere. So the better bush one here has now gotten up to this height, it looks like. Wait, no, that better bush one is the one that didn't take. Better bush one is the dead one here. Yeah, so this one doesn't have any red anymore. Yeah, I was about to say, I'm pretty sure that was a yellow one. Yeah, that is a yellow one. That's gone up to here. A yellow sibling that's gone up to there. And this is the one where I grafted 2 in there. That was my little twofer. And now I see that the other one here has gotten to a decent bit of height as well. So we've got 3 yellow ones on here and a black one, the Indigo Rose. I mean, it's technically really dark purple rather than black, but still. And now that one is starting to grow. That one was lagging behind for a little while. Now it's starting to do a little bit better. So I have several of these better bush and 2013 yellow ones grafted on here just because it's what I had a lot of. So I'm thinking, as I do a 2x2, that I'll put like my 2 ones with something different in the front here. So I'll do the one with the beefsteak one over this way, because this is my big tomato section where I'll come to harvest tomatoes that you put into sandwiches and stuff. Considering I have pink brandywine, genuine, Creole tomato I got from Louisiana, and beefsteak here. So maybe I'll put in the one with beefsteak here, with beefsteak kind of out that way, kind of towards the bigger tomatoes. I mean, if it even produces anything. Then the one with Indigo Rose I'll put here, and then the other 2 in the back. This is about as deep as I could dig this year. It's not like these raised beds go super duper deep. So I mean, I'll keep in mind, it's beefsteak left, 2013 yellow in the middle, and then better bush on the right. Grab them by their stems, maybe shake it out a little bit. There. Come on. This might be a 2-person job. Something or other. All right, well, I'm getting it out. Whoa, that is quite a lot of roots. Very nice. Yeah, this thing really wanted to go into the ground, didn't it? Don't see any potato tubers. Whoa. All right, well, it's in. That is a red apple potato. I didn't quite get all the roots out. Well, that'll be fertilizer in there now, I guess. That'll break down. And then we have our first tomato planted. Alright, I'm thinking this little lonesome one I'll put here, the most tucked away. That one I can afford to bury a decent bit deeper, so I dug all the way down to where there's cardboard there that I laid out when installing these raised beds. This is the stalk that failed to take on that plant here, the better bush one. You can see the graft point is right there. So they did indeed sort of fuse together, but clearly not well enough. My camera's not going to focus in, is it? Clearly not well enough, like maybe my alignment was out, couldn't get a proper nutrient sharing. I mean, clearly I can graft these two types together considering it's worked in some of these other ones, but I guess that was just a pretty sloppy graft. So, fertilizer. Kind of shake this out a little bit. Whoa. Yeah, that's pretty rooty too. Oh, you can see where it's trying to make new stalks. Around several sides, actually. There's another one coming up there. So, I don't know if this one's gonna take. So, maybe I should leave it with a stalk. Here, I'll snap off some of these. Wow, I can't do it super cleanly with gloves on. Like that one clearly wants to become a whole conglomerate thing. I'll snap this one off too. I'll leave this one. I can try grafting something else onto there later for funsies. But for now, let's try placing this in here. Plant it nice and deep, nice and comfortable. And let's just bury it a whole bunch now. Alright, last one here. And one thing that I have definitely noticed, I've been pulling all these out, is I've yet to see any potato tubers forming on the outsides of any of these tomato plants. Like, it could be that they're still just very young, or that in an environment like this, where it's super compact, they're not going to be able to make any. Tis always possible. Once they're planted in here, things should be a decent bit better. Alright, so it's two 2013 yellow ones on either side of a better bush one. I'm going to hold this kind of upside down. I'm going to push it from the bottom, because these are just thin plastic pots that you can do that with. So kind of push that out. Whoa! Look at that. I saw this stalk starting to come up from the outside there. I'm gonna pick that off. I don't have my nails. Just take off that glove with my teeth there, because then I can kind of use my nails to cut. There, drop that into the hole. Holy crap. Yeah, that needs planting in the ground. Hey look, other stalks and things. Alright, let's just place that in here. Getting dirt all over my hoodie. Alright, I gotta stake these guys. They are going to fall over if I don't. Something like that. I'll use the rest of this Velcro-y tape. Let's just cover the whole camera like a super professional YouTuber there. Tie some of these guys to the tomato cage, but that is essentially the tomato patch. Alright, so this was a better bush tomato in the middle of two yellow ones. So better bush, 2013 yellow. There we go. 2013 yellow is still what I have the most of around here, in case I need to do any grafts later on that one, if that one sends up some new shoots and keeps on seeming iffy about that one. These other three, though, look great. These ones I grafted onto my red apple potatoes, they did great. But yeah, that golden one that just made a singular large stalk, and I did that really weird graft on the inside. I mean, some of my other 2 for grafts have worked, but yeah. So we'll see how these develop here. Just wanted to give a little update here because it is currently June 14th. When I first grafted these on, it was May 14th. So these have now been grafted on for 1 month, and they are already about just as bushy as some of the plants that I took them off of. I mean, here's my beefsteak one that I would have taken that off of, or my other beefsteak one that I gave away. There's this one here that has gotten pretty battered by the storm that you can see I took a stalk off of there for my tomatoes. It's starting to come back here a decent bit. I don't think I took any off of that one. And some pretty decently bushy ones over here. And with how insane the root structure on those potatoes was, these have really grown really very fast compared to the stalks that was initially on there. Like, they've grown a lot faster than they would have on their original plants, it seems like here. I'm still a little bit iffy about this one back here. Like, I might just let this one bring up another stalk, considering, yeah, that also looks almost like it's slowly falling out. I mean, it's still alive. It is getting nutrients here. June 19th now, and I definitely should have tied this up. It seems to have fallen over. It's still alive. Still hasn't grown all that much. Like, it's still attached in there very weakly. Yeah, I don't think this one is gonna make it. Not entirely sure. And that one there that I was iffy about is staying still for now. Things are looking a-okay there. This one is continuing to flower here, and lots of the other ones here are developing flower buds. Well, it is currently Monday, the 8th of July. I just want to give a little update to the tomatoes because holy crap. They are starting to get so bushy that they are like leaning on each other, and if I ever did this in the future, I think that they would need more space between one another. This one back here definitely didn't make it. It is possible that there might be other potato stalks coming up here, and if I see any come up, then I'll just let them grow and still get some potatoes there. But the other three have just completely taken over the space and are starting to reach like everywhere here. So they are a little bit crazy. The actual graft points, I am a little bit concerned about this one here, that one falling out. Like, would this fall out? Is it, like, it's pretty fused in there, but it's still a pretty small attachment point, so I'm a little bit concerned about that. This one's looking pretty good here. Then the Indigo Rose, well, which is pretty low down. I don't want that making tomato roots. There, uncover that a little bit. There was someone that I saw at a farmer's market recently that was selling plants, and Pomatoes came up in conversation, and she said that she tried them once, but it didn't make any potatoes. And I asked where she buried it, and she just said, like, as deeply as possible, which means it probably developed tomato roots, and that would probably be the reason why. I made sure that all these graft points are above ground, some more than others, some are pretty close there. Hopefully that tomato doesn't make any roots. I saw one of the stalks here. Yeah, it was this one making a new potato stalk the other day, so I just picked that off yesterday. Beefsteak one here is still looking pretty good there. And yeah, all of these ones that just have one in there are still looking pretty good. I'm a little bit concerned about that, so I might not do any more twofers if I ever do this again in the future. A one-fer is probably enough, but even this little scraggly one, this little thin one here, is still quite a significantly sized plant now. What do the graft points look like on these guys at this point? Wow, I'll just drop my sunglasses. I took off some of that grafting wax, some of it is still on there. Yeah, it's getting pretty close to buried here. So, here's hoping that that's okay. That one should be okay, I think. It was this one that I was worried about. It looks like one side of the potato might not be there anymore, but the other side might still be. And it's kind of hard to tell. The graft point does look a little bit sketchy, but the plant itself, I mean, this looks pretty fine. But yeah, some of these, they're starting to go over and like lean on one another. Also, there are tomatoes developing on this one better bush one here. Like, you can see a patch back there, if I can clear it enough. Wow. Here, let's get the camera in here. So here's a whole patch that is developing of better bush tomatoes. Wow, it's so hard to get a right angle. Here, there's a whole bunch of Pomato tomatoes. There's a whole bunch developing back there. I mean, whoops, sorry, Pomato. It's kind of really hard to get in here. May as well snap that off now. Sorry, plant. But they are covered in flowers everywhere here, so I'm sure that there will be all sorts of tomatoes starting to develop all over here very soon. That's just the first couple. Put that in there, that'll be fertilizer. But now that they are just spreading and climbing all over one another, I think I might need to get some more sticks and kind of stake them up a little bit, because this is insanity. Also, the beefsteak one, it looks like is still the lowest down one. It has kind of climbed, oh dang it, outside the cage. There's no way I'm getting this inside the cage at this point, but it is now up to here, and it is doing amazing. I mean, my actual beefsteak tomato is like my biggest one here. Like, it is an absolutely insane tomato plant. Alright, another really quick update here. I was just curious because I was wondering whether the beefsteak one would produce anything at all. But if I actually follow this stalk up, wow. Kind of difficult to get the camera aligned here. If I keep on following this up to this here and across, I'm still holding it. Yeah, those are beefsteak tomatoes being developed by potato roots. What do you know? It will produce. Alright, so it is currently Saturday, the 17th of August. They have gone a little crazy here. I just got a low battery warning. Hopefully that didn't stop the video when that notification came up. So I kind of have some walls here for supports. There's a lot of tomatoes everywhere. I gotta be careful to step over my yellow watermelons. I put this in because this is getting pretty tall. And apparently I was supposed to expect lesser yield because potatoes will be taking energy too. So I mean, I don't know how many potatoes there's gonna be because there's a lot of tomatoes on here, a lot of which are starting to change color. And I wanted to record this video because the first couple are ready. First of all, we can see all sorts of different colors on there. We can see the indigo rose here, that's gradually ripening. Those are the purple tomatoes / black tomatoes, depending on what light you see them in. There's these 2013 yellow tomatoes, and then deep in there, there's the better bush tomatoes, which are the red cherry tomatoes. So it's interesting looking at this plant and seeing all these different colors. I mean, these are technically two plants. Yellow plus red is one, and then indigo rose is the neighboring plant. Because indigo rose is this one here, where it's indigo rose plus two yellow ones. Well, I mean, 3 yellow ones you could say. Whereas this one was the better bush, yellow one right there, and then the beefsteak one. And I wasn't sure how many to expect from the beefsteak, but I believe I counted 3 on this stalk. So here's the yellow stalk straight down, and the beefsteak stalk straight down is this one here. So yeah, there's 1, 2, 3. Wow. If I get past this leaf. 2, 3 currently on the beefsteak stalk going into the Pomato, so you can see it going straight down there. So I haven't seen any others yet. It's coming up here, it looks like. So there's lots of other beefsteak tomatoes because there's a beefsteak plant right next to it. And as for these yellow ones, I know that they're Pomato ones. All the cherry tomatoes are Pomato ones because all these are big tomatoes. Because this that's kind of hidden here is a Creole tomato underneath the beefsteak. That's a Creole. This is a pink brandywine, that one is a genuine, and this crazy mass here is a beefsteak. So it's kind of hard to tell the beefsteaks from one another, so I just have to keep an eye on which stalk is going in where, and know that these are the Pomato beefsteak tomatoes. So it's crazy that it's developing 3 of these big tomatoes, while also developing yellow ones, while also developing red ones. And some types of both are now ready. So that has somehow wound its way over in there. So I picked some of my 2013 yellow tomatoes from my pure tomato plants there. And I want to do a little bit of a taste test. So just trying one of these here first to get an idea. And then let's pick the very first of the Pomato tomatoes of the season. Look at that. Maybe I could have waited a little bit longer. Get slightly more ripe, but let's see here. Yeah, I taste a slight difference, but I think that's just because that tomato could have used a little bit more time on there, most likely. Like, it's not any more variance than I'd get from just picking 2 tomatoes of slightly different ages off of the same plant. Like, it's not a major, oh my god, this is so different kind of thing. And as for the better bush ones, I have a couple better bush tomatoes here. So I was just gonna pick a couple of these for reference. So let's just pick a couple of them off here. And have one as a quick reference. That one. Yeah. Pomato tomato. This tomato was made from the energy of potato roots and the nutrients of that. Yeah, I mean, it tastes basically the same to me. Again, like very, very slight variance, but no more than just having a couple tomatoes of very slightly different ripeness off of the same plant. Like, it's not all that much. But yeah, in terms of the whole expect less yield, because the potatoes will be taking some nutrients as well. Yeah, I am seeing a very, very high yield here so far. I mean, we can compare it to some of my pure 100% tomatoes here. I mean, they're pretty filled as well. This needs a, oh my. I need something better to lean these against, huh? I mean, that works for now. Like, does the production seem higher on pure 100% tomatoes? Maybe. Maybe it does. I mean, these are producing quite a decent bit. Especially when you consider that these ones making these cherry tomatoes, like this red plant is the same as this yellow plant, is the same as this beefsteak plant. It's making all of these things. So, while also making potato tubers. So that's a lot of work that these plants are putting in here. So it is currently the 23rd of August. My throat is a little bit dry. When I heard to expect decreased production from making pomatoes, yeah, I don't know about that. It's got quite a bit of fruit all over, and a decent bit all over that's been getting ripe lately. So I've been coming out here and snacking here and there. There's a whole bunch of red ones in there. Yeah, pick those off. All the cherry tomatoes in here all come from Pomatoes. The only normal tomatoes I planted here, or the only big tomatoes I planted in here, I should say, that happen to be normal tomatoes with normal tomato roots, are the big kinds. Like a pink brandywine one there that's getting kind of ripe, and the beefsteak one here that's taken over everything. So that is not a tomato, that would be the beefsteak. Hey look, a whole bunch of yellow ones from the Pomatoes. Only 3 beefsteak ones are these 3. Or the only 3 beefsteak Pomatoes, I should say, are those 3. But yeah, I'm finding ripe stuff all over here. So, wow. Can I has? Sweet, I can has. So I just come out here from time to time and pick a whole bunch more tomatoes. So yeah, it's actually turning out pretty well. Oh, there's a whole patch over there. Wow, if my camera can see them, there we go. Yeah, maybe I'll have to go around and pick off a whole bunch of these. So I might just have to do. Yeah. All right, it is currently the 6th of September now. I just harvested my potatoes yesterday for my pure potato plants that I was growing over at my grandma's place. And that's already a decent bit later than I harvested them last year. Last year I harvested them on August 25th as opposed to September 5th, so it was a little bit later on this year. And still got a pretty decent yield out of them. It was a little bit overgrown with weeds there because I've been super busy and didn't get the chance to weed it more than twice this year. And I would have thought maybe around this time, these plants would be calling it quits because the potatoes underneath would probably be like, hey, it's about time that we're done. We only live for a few months, and then what's above ground would start dying off. But what's above ground on these guys still looks extremely happy, healthy, and is producing a lot of fruit. Like, I come out here and I snack from time to time. That didn't pop off quite as easily as I thought it would. Maybe it's not completely ripe, but still good. I got them a pretty good mix of red and yellow now. The 3 beefsteak ones haven't started ripening yet. Hopefully there's time before frost comes in. We shall see. And as for the few indigo rose ones that are on here, oh, this might actually be ripe. Indigo rose ones are ripe when they start to develop a little red. So, yeah, look at that. The first indigo rose pomato that was made from potato roots right over in here. Wow. You can just barely kind of see where it was grafted, or not. Sort of. Sort of, you can see it. You can see a slight little bit of potato stalk there. Hopefully it's not low enough down that the tomato start making its own roots. That would not be good. But yeah, pretty happy, healthy looking tomato. Is that one ripe? Not quite yet, still a little bit green. But yeah, it's really cool to see this mix of red and yellow all on the same bushes here. I don't think that it's quite as heavy production as my just pure tomato plants like are over here. This is being recorded after I just went over and picked a whole bunch, but even still, there's still a lot that are ripe on here. Still really nice tomatoes all over it. Like, I can come over here and fill another little bucket. I filled a tiny little pail of red ones from this and yellow ones from one of my plants over there. So, I mean, I could probably fill a little container at this point with a whole bunch of yellow and red tomatoes off my tomato plants. In fact, maybe I should. So while this would normally be the time of year to harvest potatoes, I think I'm gonna wait a bit longer and see how long these guys last. I'm not entirely sure how many potatoes will be under there, but I'm very much looking forward to seeing what happens. And another thing that really surprised me is potatoes, they usually don't get like very tall. They'll get up to maybe here or something like that at most. So I thought that the potatoes underground might have an influence on the growth of the tomatoes above ground, but nope, doesn't really look like they have. So, here, use your imagination, because I can't do this with one hand, but just to have a look-see in there, that is an Indigo rose tomato made by potato roots, and it looks pretty good, and it tastes pretty much just like an Indigo rose tomato. Like, I really can't tell a taste difference, and they're pretty good. All right, the current date is September 19th. There's no more flowers on the tomatoes. They're pretty done, just ripening what's still left on there. So I'm still coming out here and munching from time to time. The nights are getting cooler. Frost is probably gonna start rolling in here soon. But what I really wanted to show is that the 3 beefsteak tomatoes are finally ready. So that's a stalk that goes into there, into the same tomato conglomerate. I don't believe it ever made, yeah, this stalk never seemed to make any more than those 3. But they seem like they were finally about ready to pick. I think they were probably a bit smaller than my pure beefsteak tomatoes. I almost said tomatoes there. Like, there's some ones just purely on the beefsteak, and they're pretty close. These ones, those would be my Creole ones. Yeah, I can tell by how soft they are. Those are Creole tomatoes. My beefsteak hasn't reached that far. Maybe pretty close to the same size. I mean, my beefsteak plant went pretty crazy here. Yeah, it's not making super duper large ones, but wow. This one's probably larger than those ones are. But I figure I will pick the few only beefsteak tomatoes that there are. Oh yeah, that came off super easy. The only beefsteak tomatoes that were raised from potato roots. I can't grab 3 with one hand. I gotta put them in this container here, along with the last plum of the season. And, yeah, these potatoes, these red apple potatoes, I believe is what they are, actually made some pretty nice looking tomatoes, I would say. Alright, it is currently the 29th of September. It's starting to get a bit chilly. A lot of plants are getting ready to pack it in for the year here, evidently. And the tomatoes, I have now harvested all the tomatoes off of all my tomato plants. And these ones, they still have new growth. They are still going. I mean, that's the way that tomato plants often are in this climate, is they'll just keep going as long as they have. But there's supposed to be frost coming in a few days here, so it's about time to pull them up, because there's basically no more time left in the season. The moment frost comes in, it's going to kill them. And it looks like there are some that I missed here that are still trying to grow. Yeah, still some new growth at the end, so it would keep going if I gave it the time. So it's good to keep on living and keep on going if the season was longer, but it's not. The frost is coming in, and it's about time to pull them up and see just how many potatoes, whoops, what did I just do? I just did something, I don't know. See just how many potatoes are being yielded by these tomato plants here. All right, this is hard to do with one hand, so a lot of this will be off camera, but let's just see if anything comes up, maybe with an initial yoink. Wow. Let's see. Oh yeah, oh yeah. Look at that. Red apple potatoes on tomatoes. Look at that. And I'll root around and see if there's any more. Well, maybe I should do an initial yoink on the other ones here first too, while I'm getting one continuous video going. So if I grab that stalk and these ones here and give a yoink. Oh, that one snapped. That, oh, does have a potato. And there's gonna be more in the ground here that I can root through and find. But yeah, that's red apple potato. And then let's just see these ones quickly. There's some tomatoes on the ground. Let's see. So that was these stalks here. Oh, oh. They're gonna be deeper underground there, I guess. None on the initial yoink this time. But yeah, the graft held together really well. The potato stalk gave way before the graft point did. Like, that's fully fused together. I just rescued a ladybug from the green bin that I guess was on one of those potato plants, one of those tomato plants. So he can find his way out whenever he gets a chance. I just finished rooting around here. As you can see, the soil's all like really loose now, as opposed to the super hard stuff over here. And this is what I got, plus some tomatoes that I missed down there. So honestly, not too half bad. So this is from 3 tomato plants in each of these corners. Unfortunately, I did not get any golden ones from there, from that plant that died, but I wasn't entirely sure if I would get any since that plant didn't do all that well and died. Maybe next year. But these red apple potatoes actually turned out pretty alrighty. Plus there's a whole bunch of really little ones in my pocket that would go through the drainage holes in this pot. So I'll take them inside and do a proper inventory here, I think. So when we average the potato yield, it looks something like this, which is about what I was getting from a good yield of my pure potato plants anyway. So the yield here seemed pretty unchanged. I did, on digging them up, kind of damage some of them here and there. I do have to get better at digging up potatoes, though the ground was also really rough there. I think it was a lot easier to dig up my pure potatoes where those were, since the ground was a whole lot looser. So yeah, definitely a little bit of a damage alongside these, but I'll use them here pretty soon, so it's not a super big deal. But yeah, it was actually a surprisingly pretty half-decent harvest. It was pretty good.
Now, looking back at it all, I want to ask myself, what could be responsible for the harvest of potatoes being pretty much the same across both my tomatoes and my pure potatoes that I was growing? Because you would think a plant that's making just potatoes and a plant that's making potatoes and a whole bunch of fruit above ground, the one that would be making just potatoes would be able to make more. You would think that would be the logical thing. I think that there's a few factors behind this. For one, the pure potatoes that I was growing, I wasn't able to give as much attention to this year as I would have otherwise liked. I did do like a full thorough weed of my plot twice this year, and that clearly wasn't enough because, oh my goodness, the weeds really like just taking over there. And I think the weeds were especially harsh to the Yukon gold potatoes. The red apple potatoes weren't as affected. They didn't seem to mind quite as much, so I definitely got more out of my red apple potatoes. The image that I displayed earlier showed roughly equal amounts from the harvest this year, and that's because I planted more red apple potatoes just because that's what I had more left over of from 2023. But the increased competition was definitely a factor, I'd say. And I don't remember what the average yield per plant was in 2023, but I'm pretty sure I planted less plants in total in 2023, and yet the yield that came from them, from the images I displayed earlier, holy crap, 2023 was a good harvest, whereas 2024, this year, was just kind of like, oh yeah, it's a thing, I guess. So this might not exactly be the most fair comparison when yields were definitely a lot lesser this year, and I don't remember what the average of one plant would be from 2023. I never took a photo of that. I specifically took a photo of it this year to compare to my pomato plants. I didn't even think about what the heck a pomato was last year. And that plot where I was looking after them, that's at my Oma's place that I do try to visit regularly, but it's not quite like here where I can go outside and just baby my pomato plants whenever I feel like it. So these ones definitely got a whole lot more care and attention. But still, even with that difference, I thought that it was interesting that the yield of both was about the same in terms of potatoes. Again, I don't think that it's completely fair, but they were about the same yield per plant. So they were basically just like potato plants that made me bonus tomatoes, is the way that it essentially worked out. And as for the tomato yield, it was honestly really, really strong. A lot of the coverage that I've seen on Pomatoes made it out to be like, oh yeah, it's gonna have some tomatoes, but it's not gonna be all that much. There was a lot of tomatoes that I was going out and picking very regularly from those bushes. It was great. But does it produce as much as a pure tomato plant? In terms of the ones that I had planted here, in terms of my yellow ones at least, it produced far more than them. But it's also not the most fair comparison, considering I had them planted in slightly different locations, and the location of my pure yellow tomatoes was in a place that the back alley kind of formed a natural wind tunnel that kept on hammering my plants and like severely hampered their production. So I don't think I'm gonna plant any tomato plants in that spot anymore in future years. And even where I had my Better Bush pure tomatoes planted that I had showed earlier in the video, there was definitely a decent bit of wind damage there as well. I think the place that I had the tomatoes planted was definitely the most sheltered and safe. I think they had like a situation advantage. So the yellow stalks definitely produced far more than my pure yellow tomatoes that were in a really bad position. And the amount of red tomatoes that were produced, the Better Bush ones per like area that took up, was probably honestly about the same with my pure Better Bushes that did struggle a little bit sometimes, but still would produce a decent amount. It's not quite like the Better Bush plant from last year, 2023, that just took over everything and produced so many tomatoes, like a whole massive box full at the end, that I harvested the seeds of, and I thought, like, the children plants of would be, like, these super crazy things that took over everything, and they just weren't really. So location was definitely a factor. If they would have gone as crazy as their parent before them, it would have been no competition. The pure tomato would have taken it. And if we're talking about, like, the ceiling of potential here, then no doubt pure tomato takes it. In terms of those yellow tomatoes, you want to see what the ceiling of potential looks like on that? Here's the tomato tree that was planted over at my Oma's place from the exact same batch of seeds that I grew my Pomato yellow tomatoes from. This thing hit the ceiling indoors in a pot before it was even planted outside. It took 2 people carrying this thing outside to plant it in the ground, and then I just immediately hung it from like some hanging basket metal thingamabobs so that it would have something to grab onto hanging down from the garage. And then from there it just like bushed out, and then it bushed out at the bottom a whole lot as well. The final harvest of this plant looked like this, which is probably more than all 3 of those Pomato plants. Like, it was insane. So I feel like if we're talking on average, or in a position where it's like they might be sustaining some potential wind damage, or the conditions might not be all that great, then it'd probably be about the same, or maybe slightly worse. There was definitely much decreased beefsteak tomato production, what with only getting 3 beefsteak tomatoes off of that, as opposed to so many beefsteak tomatoes I was getting off of the pure plant. But it was also making 2 more kinds of tomatoes and potatoes. And when you account for how many Better Bush and 2013 yellow tomatoes it was making, it was still a lot. Okay, it is currently early December. I've been making this video for a while now. I've been sick for a decent while now, but I have a couple corrections that I want to make. One is more so just an additional note rather than a correction, is with the potato-tomato grafts themselves. The graft point was actually really strong. When I pulled them up from the ground, none of them snapped at the graft point. The graft point stayed intact. It was very thoroughly fused together. I don't know why I didn't think to mention that earlier. And the correction that I wanted to make is the tomatoes that I thought were Better Bush, that I referred to as Better Bush throughout this entire video, I recently figured out weren't actually Better Bush after I looked up what Better Bush looks like and their big slicing tomatoes. And I thought that they were Better Bush because in 2023 there was 2 tomato plants, just store-bought tomato plants, that were planted in my Oma's yard. We didn't do like any growing from seed like I did a bazillion of this year. And I didn't know what kinds of tomatoes those were. Those are just tomato plants that my mom bought and planted. But when I needed pots for my tomato plants, I found pots that those store-bought tomato plants previously came from, and one was labeled Better Bush. And I thought from the little image on it that it was the super crazy cherry tomato that went and took over everything, because that's what the tomatoes look like kind of on the image. And when I had asked about that, it sounded like the plant that was in that pot at one point was that cherry tomato that had spread and taken over everything. And I realized later, wait, that was the beefsteak type tomato on the other side of the plot, and not the cherry tomato type that was near the garage door. So I apologize that I've been mislabeling a type of tomato throughout this entire video, but I genuinely thought that's what it was for the past year plus. So yeah, the yellow tomatoes that I was growing on potato roots and the red tomatoes that I was growing on potato roots, I have no idea what either of them are. So if I do this again in future years, I'll definitely be sure to just be using types that I know what they are. And maybe the 2013 yellows that I'll just continue referring to as 2013 yellows, because that has to be like one of my favorite tomato types ever. They're so sweet, they're so good. So if there was any big fans of the Better Bush tomato watching this video, I'm sorry. So compared to my average tomatoes, I would say the production is decreased, but not by a massive ton. But if we're comparing to like the ceiling of potential here, like tomato plants that are grown in my Oma's garden where everything just grows like crazy, then it's no competition. The pure tomatoes take it by a landslide. But this is still a really interesting experiment to do, and I'm not at all displeased with the results. I got a nice amount of potatoes that wasn't any different from my pure potatoes, and I got quite a decent bowl full of tomatoes several times. I would literally go out there with a bowl and fill it up, and then just snack on those. Or I'd take them to like events that friendos that I'd grown up with would invite me to, and then I'd tell people like, oh, these are actually grown with potato roots. And then everyone would look at me with disbelief like, what? Really? Why? That was always the first question. And by doing Pomatoes as a bit of an experiment, I get to improve my grafting ability in general. Like, this was mainly a practice exercise, so I could get better at fruit tree grafting. Like, I had one successful apple tree graft this year. This is a red wonderleaf. It is a red-fleshed apple, which is really cool, so it's red inside instead of yellow inside. And this is growing on my Oma's crabapple tree now. And it's the only successful graft that I got on there, really. But I hope to improve my rate of success in future years with more and more grafting opportunities. I am thinking that I do want to make Pomatoes again in 2025 and experiment with them in some different ways. If I do wonder if I should give them a little bit more space, because 8 plants per one of those raised beds was a little bit compact. Like, I still got pretty good yield off of that, but with the craziness and how much they were bushing out, they might have preferred a little bit more space, so maybe I'll give them a little bit more space, or maybe I'll just get really greedy again and want so many different tomato types that I end up putting a bazillion in there again next year. But I do want to try new things next year. Like, for one, I just so happen to have them in a Ziploc bag over here. I'll put them into cold storage here pretty soon. I recently, and words are hard, I recently came into possession of purple potatoes that already seemingly want to grow, and the stalks that come out of them are purple. And the red apple potatoes, the stalks that would come out of them, are red, and when I pulled them up with their roots, a lot of their roots were red. So I assume it'll be the same with purple potatoes, except being purple. And this is already a little bit too much growth for mid-November 2024, so yeah, definitely gonna have to cool these down, put them into cold storage. But I've never tried growing purple potatoes before. I've never even eaten a purple potato before. I don't know what they taste like, but I'm very intrigued by them. And I think I would like to try combining them with some other plants next year. One of the main reasons why I wanted to make this video is because there isn't really a whole lot of guides on how to make something like Pomatoes. They do exist. I have seen other YouTube videos that I use as a little bit of a guide before making my own here. But there aren't really any that seem to show the entire progress in depth, like throughout the season, different steps of the way. And that is something that I want to contribute here, while also showing a lot more in-depth, this is like the full grafting process and all that. So I was able to contribute something maybe a little bit of a step further than what might otherwise be out there. And if I do it again next year, I could just do the same thing again, but I think I would like to continue to push myself to try out new things, and now start trying out new things that nobody has done before. Because I have some different species in mind that I would like to try combining with potatoes and tomatoes. Okay, first off, whoa, it's echoey here. Forgive the mess that is in here. It is because basement renovations. It is just emptiness all around here, and the washroom as well. So a lot of stuff has had to move to other places, and there's a whole bunch of materials and stuff. But this year I kind of experimented with growing some other things in the nightshade family. So the nightshade family has tomatoes, potatoes, peppers, and eggplants is like the big commonly commercialized ones. But I wanted to try out some different flavors. So in addition to cool experiments like Pomatoes, I tried out growing some different things. Now it's currently mid-November. It is the 15th of November at the time of recording this. So I can't exactly have any plants outside anymore because it's cold, frosted, and it's killed them all. But some of them in pots I brought indoors. Like this one here, which looks like it's on its way out right now, is called an amber pearl. They're basically like little tomato-like fruit that taste basically like small tomatoes. There's also golden pearls, which look exactly like this, but golden. And the leaves are fuzzy on that one, whereas on the amber pearl they're not. And they have a more different, unique kind of taste to them. I think one of my favorite berries here is this one, the purple hull tomato. This didn't actually get to fruit before the season was over. So I brought this one in because I was like, I want to try out what the flavor of its fruit is like. And they're these tiny little black berries. And to me, they kind of taste like a bit of a cross between a blueberry, a tomato, and a little hint of citrus. And I think out of all my experimental nightshades I've been growing, these might be my favorite flavor. Like, I actually really, really like these now. And my goodness, this thing has grown towards this light so dang much. And the leaves are fuzzy. They're really quite pleasant to the touch. And the flowers, wah, if I can get an angle, or something like that. Are there any open flowers like that? So they're pretty decently nice, but the fruit is a whole lot better. And this one I haven't gotten any fruit from yet. This is called a kangaroo apple, and at some point maybe I should tie it up to there, like I know that's wanting to lean over this way and come towards the light. This was a flowering stalk, and it flowered twice,
but it started to develop what looked like little berries, but then they just kind of fell off. So I don't know if it wasn't properly pollinated or I missed something here, but I will keep trying because I still want to know what this tastes like. And all of these, as far as I'm aware, like the coverage on them is pretty niche because they're pretty niche, unheard of plants. As far as I'm aware, they're all in the nightshade family as well, and in the same genus as tomatoes and potatoes, meaning they're pretty closely related. So while tomatoes and potatoes isn't exactly anything new, there's been lots of people that have done that. Like, it's still pretty niche, but I'm far from the first person to do that. Niche species like this, who knows if it's been combined with potatoes before and tomatoes. So I might just be tempted to next year see how many different species I can get onto one plant. So while I had multiple different varieties of tomatoes, that was still just 2 species on one plant. Potato roots, tomato stalks. But if I put different things onto different potato stalks, like one stalk is a purple hull tomato, one stalk is an amber pearl, one stalk is a golden pearl, one stalk is a kangaroo apple, and just see what happens when I combine so many different species onto one plant, that might be really cool. And I might also be the first person to try combining these plants and document my results, so I can actually kind of contribute to increased knowledge on this field to kind of expand knowledge of what's possible. And I think that that might be really cool.
But yeah, that's about it. This was an incredibly long video. If you found this helpful or informative, I'd be glad to hear it. If you know a whole lot more about this than I do and want to correct me on all the things that I'm completely wrong on, please do. I would love to learn. And if this is something that you'd like to see more of, then let me know, because I think it'd be something interesting to continue making. But yeah, I'm still pretty new to this field. I'm still very much learning myself. But I hope that through continued practice, I will be able to continue improving. So yeah, I greatly appreciate you tuning into the video. And until next time, take care and see ya.